Okay, so what we're going to talk about is, and it's on your thing that is passed out, we're going to talk about how I want you to construct this paper, okay? So if you want to write this in the note, as notes in the back of the handout I just gave you on your own, I don't care where you put it, but I want to talk about it so you guys will have a better idea of what the paper is going to look like. This paper itself is worth 100 points. Your next paper is worth 200 points. Your paper after that is worth 300 points. Not doing this paper, the last one especially, will mathematically ensure that you do not pass this class. Unless you have like 102%. Right? A 0 for 300, not good for your grade. I don't know how many you're good at math, but that one should be easy to figure out. Right? I have had several kids who have back in class again because they just didn't do their last paper. Okay? That also sucks for them, but whatever. Alright, now, first thing, let's talk about your intro paragraph. And again, this is on the thing I passed out, but just to re-emphasize, and it's being filmed to re-emphasize again, right? In your intro paragraph, several things need to happen. The first thing is, the reader needs to make sure, or you need to make sure that the reader understands the basic idea of the chapter. What is this particular chapter about?
Names.
Names.
Sorry, my foot, I usually...
this is about names, but it's not just about names. It's your chapter about names, right? That's not what you need to be writing, but you need to address what the subject of the reading is. Also, you need to deal with the question the author is trying to answer. And we're going to get into this today. Now, okay. Next... the author's name is two authors. The author you're allowed to use the name Stephen Levitt, or you can use it if you want. Stephen Levitt is the author of Freakonomics. And then you need to come up with what is the author's thesis. So in your reading, we need to be looking for what is this about? What question is the author trying to answer? And what is the thesis of the author? And the last sentence of your intro, and from time immemorial, on every academic paper you'll write in college, the last sentence of your intro needs to be your thesis. Now, what is a thesis? Hopefully this is not a new thing for you. What is a thesis?
What you get out of it? Main idea.
You're taught that the thesis is the main idea in like the 4th grade, right? The thesis in academic papers is what you are trying to prove. It's what you're trying to prove. And what do you use to prove your thesis? Starts with an E.
Evidence.
Evidence. You use evidence to prove your thesis. The author is going to use evidence to prove his thesis. So in this paper, what you are trying to figure out and what your thesis will deal with is, did the author effectively prove his thesis, or was the author's thesis not effectively proven because the evidence wasn't substantial enough, or that you have claim against the evidence? Many of us, I want you to raise your hand. Raise your hand and tell me, how many of you have read something before, 2 or 3 or 4 pages, and you've gotten done, you're like, I got no idea what I just read. I just read it and I got nothing. Never, Candace? Never happened. Alright. Well, good for you. It happens to me. I was a history major in college, and we read a lot. Right? If you're a history major or an English major in college, you read a bunch. If you go to a good school, you're going to read even more. There'd be times at 1 in the morning when I'd be reading, and I'd be like, I just read the whole chapter in this book and I have no idea what just happened. One reason why is I was not reading effectively. What the thesis analysis sheet that I've given you does is help you, as you're reading, focus on what you're looking for. Have you ever read something and you've been looking for something when you're reading it?
Yeah.
Don't you read it more effectively then? What we're looking for in this is, what's the question? What's the author's thesis? And what evidence is he using to prove that thesis? So if you're looking for evidence and you're thinking the whole time, then you're going to be a much better reader. That's going to be the reading strategy we're going to use, is looking for evidence. Let's look for evidence. Let's look for his thesis, okay? Your thesis is statement concerning the success or failure of the author's thesis. Essentially, your take. Does the author prove his thesis? Are thesis statements or are thesis questions? Statements. I want to see questions. I don't want to see on your paper, does a name matter? Question. And then a bunch of questions like you're writing a note to somebody. Alright? This is a formal paper. Your thesis also will organize your paper. And the organization of your paper will follow logically in each body paragraph. So the first body paragraph will be concerned with a broad argument. For instance, look at the thesis analysis sheet I've given you. Look at the part where it says the broad arguments, right? Do you see that?
Yeah.
Right here? Move this. Right? Broad arguments. A broad argument is something that you can expand upon. Each body paragraph will be focused on one broad piece of or topic that the author is using as evidence. And we'll get more into this as we read, and we'll be filling this out as we read together for this first one. Again, this first one I really walk you through so you know what you're doing. The second and third one is more on your own. We're going to spend several days in here dealing with this so you guys know how to write this correctly. Tomorrow, not only will we be finishing the chapter, we'll also be giving you guys some examples of good papers. Okay? I'm not going to give you examples of crappy papers. One, because it'll make the person who wrote it feel really bad. But also because I don't want you even seeing a bad paper, so you don't visualize, oh, at least it's better than that piece of crap, right? I want you focusing on what's good rather than on what's good enough. The first sentence of your body paragraph is a topic sentence. I call it a mini thesis, right? The entire paragraph is focused on one thing. And how is it that you prove that mini thesis? Where do you prove? What do you use to prove something?
Questions.
Evidence. You know, questions are questions. Evidence answers questions. So your mini thesis is a statement about what the author is using to prove his thesis, and you're getting evidence. Where are you finding your evidence in this? Where's the evidence?
From the book.
It's in the book, right? You're finding evidence from the reading to prove your mini thesis. Each mini thesis proves a thesis. So within each body paragraph, you're just focused on that mini thesis. And we'll talk more about this. It'll make more sense, right, as we talk about it. Like with the names, you know, education of parents is a really big deal in how successful a child's going to be, right? So one whole mini thesis might be the names of children are less important than the education of the parents giving the name. And then the rest of the paragraph would be evidence from the chapter, specific, not just talking about it, but specific evidence proving the point with quotes. No, I don't want quotes longer than 1 or 2 lines, though. A lot of times you guys give me quotes for 4 or 5 or 6 lines thinking that's writing your whole paper. That's not what I want. Quotes that are 1 or 2 pages, and then you analyze the evidence. Analyze it. What's it really mean? Each one of these broad topics has a bunch of evidence. This paper I've given you, 2 or 3 pages, really, if you're going to write a good paper, it's going to be longer. Do you have to type this paper?
No.
I prefer you type it. If you don't have a computer and you have to write it out, that's fine. Those of you who have a computer, I prefer it's easier to read. And you can double space it, obviously, if you're writing a paper, typing it. But if you're writing out in hand, don't double space it. But I'm not looking for you just to clamor on, and you can't be a page and a half. If you take me an AP, you'll see that I grade a very BS-proof way. Right? There are kids who have written 7-page essays before, and I've given them 27%. Right? I mean, it's crap. You just rambled on and told me anything. When you have to give me evidence, what am I looking for when I grade your paper? Specific evidence. If you just ramble on and BS, how do you raise your hand if you're BS for a long time, hoping that the teacher wouldn't notice you're just talking for a while? Right. You can try that with me, but homie, don't play that. So you can ramble on as much as you want. But I don't see any specific evidence. What you literally see in your paper is me writing the big word specifics over your paper with a question mark and exclamation points. When the camera goes off, I'll talk about how I've gotten nicer as a grader, but I don't want to share some of my secrets on the internet. Whoa. Alright. Each one of your body paragraphs follows this same organizational pattern. Mini thesis, Evidence analysis, evidence analysis, evidence analysis, move on to the next paragraph. Mini thesis, evidence analysis, evidence analysis, evidence analysis, move on. Listen, if you organize it really well, it's so much easier to write. That's why I give you these mini thesis, or these thesis analysis. I'll tell you a story here in a second. I'll even put it online, saying something bad about me. Online. And your conclusion does not have to be 100 pages long. I prefer you not end it with "in conclusion" because that's what everybody does, and it's trite and overused. It can be 2, 3, 4 sentences, and essentially what you're doing is you're recapping and reviewing your thesis and the mini thesis. You're letting the reader, you're finishing it off. You're taking the reader on a journey with the intro, right? Your introduction, the idea. What's the question? Here's the author's thesis. Here's my thesis. And here's all the evidence going along with it. By the time you get to the conclusion, maybe you should remind the reader of all of your evidence, right? Of all the main ideas, and you close it off. Maybe you want to end it with something to think about, maybe you don't. Either way, it needs to round itself out. Now, how many body paragraphs should you have? It depends on how many broad topics you have, right? What if you have 5 broad topics with lots of evidence? Then how many body paragraphs should you have? 5. What if you have 3 broad topics of evidence to prove your point? How many should you have then? 3. There is no, you guys get taught the 5-paragraph essay, right? The intro, 3 body paragraphs, and conclusion. That's a fine way to start. But you can have 4 body paragraphs if there's more evidence, right? Right? You're not going to go to hell if you have an extra body paragraph. I said that, it's on the internet now. It must be true. How bad would it be? You die, you get to St. Peter, and he's like, I'm sorry. You did a pretty good job, but there was the issue of the 4th body paragraph. Denied. You'll be okay. On your thesis analysis, there are 2 people. I'm going to make up these 2 names. One's name is Corey Sayre and one's name is Duncan Cavanaugh. He was my college roommate for 4 years. All right? Still made it. He and I were both history majors. And he and I lived together for 4 years, really good friend, and his mother was a professor of English, right? He's a really good writer. And Duncan and I wrote papers very, very differently. Duncan, and let's say we're writing a 10-page paper, right? Duncan would have a 3-page outline with his introduction ideas. He would have his thesis. He would have all his transitions. He'd have all his evidence already written out. The page number was getting everything, right? All organized. And I would have nothing. I would just be like, I would have my thesis in my head, right? And I would sit down at my computer and I'd start writing. I'd back that up a little bit. I'd write for a while. I get to my body paragraphs. I get my books out and I'm looking things up, right? I'm trying to find out things. I wrote some, oh, it's crap. I'd go back and change it. In the end, who wrote faster? He did. Even though it seemed like he was doing more work up front, which he was doing more work up front, in the end his process was way faster. Who got better grades? He did. Duncan did. Duncan got better grades on papers than I did, almost routinely. We were in probably 8 classes together, or 7 classes together, and he routinely got better grades than I did on my papers because he was really organized. What he did was essentially giving you the thesis analysis. I'm giving you the question, not giving you, but I'm making you put down the question, the author's thesis, all the evidence. And see on the bottom half where it says you're supposed to put specific quotes, specific evidence, and page numbers? You can use the back for all this. Really good writers, I've had internet, so I shouldn't mention their names, but I've had a lot of good writers in this class, and the ones who do a really good job, they use this as a way to write their paper way more easily. So they might fill up the back part of this. When they go to write their paper, it's all right there, right? When they're reading their paper, they might be highlighting things or put little marks like page this or whatever, they say like body paragraph 3, they'd write on their, the handout. And then when it goes to write the paper, they don't have to sift through every word. What can they do? Oh, it's right there. Got it. Right? So if you do this really well, when does this due, by the way? Wednesday. Why am I making this due Wednesday? Why not when the paper's due? So I can look at it, tell you what you're doing wrong, so you can fix it and write your paper more effectively. Right? So you get this back before you write your paper. Okay? This is why I'm doing this. So you can be more like Duncan and less like me. Though to be fair, I beat Duncan on tests. He beat me on papers, I beat him on tests. I'm just putting that out there so you have confidence in your teacher. All right. So